Farming games are a very niche genre of games that I think have gotten popularity over the last couple of years. The thing that honestly makes me love farming games is just the fact that it is basically playing a game in another world where you get to explore yourself as a human being or as an individual that allows you to express yourself in a way that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So hey, my name is Multi126789. Welcome to the first episode of the Why I Love series, and today we're starting off with some good old farming games because we're gonna get the side of nature and our own expression of freedom back into ourselves. So let us begin.
You're in my way!
Around 13 years ago, when I was a young person, younger than I am and I sound now, um, back then I used to be a person who used to play video games quite a bit because, as somebody who, even though I was extrovert rather than an introvert, I still enjoyed playing video games to myself or sharing that experience with other people. So a lot of my time was always spent around playing video games because it was the one thing that drew me to at least want to continue doing all my monotonous everyday stuff like going to school and hanging out with people because I didn't dislike those sorts of things, but playing video games was one of my things that I really enjoyed. On a fateful day back that many years ago, I was curiously given the luxury of getting a laptop as a very young adult. And when you get a laptop as a very young adult, you wonder all the possibilities that you now, when you have this little computer at your side, what you would do with it. But you probably already guessed from while I'm talking what I did with it. That's right, I decided to go and look at new video games that I could potentially go and find and play, because I never got the chance to when I was like even younger than this. There was a lot of games that I was interested in, but one of them stuck out to me when I was searching through the land before, digitalization. And it was called Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. Now, this game was the first ever game that I think I've ever played that I really started to fall in love or started to understand the genre as a whole. It was for the Game Boy around the time, but at that point, the DS was out, a lot of cartridges for the Game Boy has soon long gone, and finding a game like Harvest Moon Mineral Town was pretty impossible to find in where I live, because most of the time around where I lived, things get pushed in, and then as soon as it comes to a year where new stuff gets put out, you basically, everything else just vanishes, and you'll never find it at that point, because at that point during my life, I don't think we had too many stores that held older or antique games, and also I was a child, so I did not think about the fact that I could have went to those stores and tried to find uh, that sort of game and paid an excruciating amount of money, considering I did not get a job until I left high school. Regardless, when I started playing that game on that laptop, I started to realize something that I really liked about the game and that I started to like about the genre in general. It's freeing to be able to have a other world version of you, or a world that you can explore that is basically like your own, that allows you to just do stuff that you wouldn't have done regularly. For me, farming has never been a thing that's always been on my mind of something I wanted to do. Agriculture is a cool thing that I think the people who have done it almost all their lives, or had people who are passed down descendants of other farmers or people of agriculture, have done plenty of times before. But my family never had any sort of background from that other than a handful of people. Not in my immediate family, but through the other parts of my immediate family. So I really never got to experience much of that other than like a handful of times. But playing a game where you get to be an individual and just entering a new town and then trying to take care of everything in yourself made me realize that I think this sort of thing is not only sort of fun, but I kind of wish that I could do that almost every day in real life. Now, realistically, in these games, you're like almost like barely a teenager, if not above the threshold. And honestly, in modern day times, I don't think a lot of this is super realistic, considering there's a lot of global things that you have to consider, unless you were literally in such a royal area that you could literally survive off of just making produce, which I'm not sure how that works nowadays, but I feel like that was the era of its time, you know, before, you know, the 2010s and factories and, you know, trying to make as much produce as possible for all these companies and trying to make it in the most quick way possible rather than efficient and healthy way for, you know, the produce that you're growing. But regardless, after playing that game that many years ago, it started making me wonder if there's any more games like that that I would ever get to play. Because I loved Friends of Mineral Town. I played it for as long as I had that little laptop that I got X amount of years ago, until it eventually broke. At that point, looking at ROMs were not a thing that I usually did. I usually just played through my consoles. And for quite a bit, I don't think I ever touched another game that had that same style of gameplay, though I was always interested in doing so. Then coming along around the 3DS era came a game called Rune Factory 4. Now, Rune Factory 4 was the first time that I've played one that was based off of the art style of, you know, Japanese anime / cartoon / animation. And a lot of it pulled me in right away because it was something that I didn't realize that I wanted also in a farming simulator where there would be combat. And with the combat actually being added, it actually enticed me more into the world because there was more stakes than just, oh, if you don't get this much money or make this much in revenue, you won't be able to eat or feed some of your animals and they'll dislike you. No, in this game, rather, you're now staking your life on the line because there's actually monsters and threats and other things in this world that will come out and try to attack you or try to challenge you while trying to make sure that your agricultural state of your farm is staying top notch. And then also the characters in this game, there was plenty of them that had their own little side stories, side quests that made me want to play even more. I think by the time I finished this version of the game, I think I had about 70, 80 hours on the 3DS. And then of course, as you guys know on my channel, I had played I have played Rune Factory 4 Special Edition, which added so much more, and it was already for a console now that I already enjoyed playing. I wouldn't always take it handheld, mind you, but having a console version where I could just sit down and play it for long hours and just lose myself in the, you know, inertia of just being able to just farm, fight monsters, raise monsters, and just, you know, enjoy the little townsfolk in those games again was an experience that I think that I just fell in love with. Moving on from that, there's been a bunch of games that I've experienced that also have the same sort of cycle in it as well. Stardew Valley then was a game that I finally got to play because I didn't have an actual dedicated PC to play it when it first originally came out. But when it came out on the Switch back in, I believe it was the end of 2017 and the beginning of 2018, when I started playing that for the first time, I started to realize how much I valued these sorts of games. Of course, there was not as much combat in that game, unless you went to the certain areas where you would go down the mine shafts and, you know, just go there to try to get certain materials so you could upgrade some things. But that one was more about exploring that town and understanding people and trying to get more into the, not agricultural side, but the also like the human nature side of the entirety of Stardew Valley. I think I put about 100 hours in there clean, and the fishing minigame was fun. The town people, even if you didn't like them, at least you realized that there were a lot of human writing there. There was a lot of stuff to discover in that game, and there was a lot of stuff to do in that game to allow yourself to succeed and be overjoyed just by the simple fact of just going onto that application every day. Around that time, too, I wasn't really feeling as confident as I was in both playing video games along with being around other people or in society as in general. It was my second time going back to college after I first went to college back in 2015, and I didn't pass the course that I was trying to take, and I got really discouraged in life. I basically ended up just working for a long time and not really caring about anything else. And then eventually, when I did try to go back to school because I wanted to have conviction and wanted to say I finished a trade in post-secondary, I went back, and this game helped a whole lot, along with another game that we obviously know that I love a lot, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, if you don't know. But both of these games I played around that time really kind of encouraged me to want to actually put a new version of myself that I was struggling to for a long time. There was a lot of games back in 2017 that actually encouraged me to try to put myself back out there instead of being down in the dumps that, you know, I didn't succeed. Because if I learned anything from also playing a lot of these farming games, is that, yeah, you can make a few mistakes, you can make a lot of mistakes, and it may not work out to your benefit, but at least you tried, and at least you tried to nurture something even if you didn't know if it was going to work out. Because even if it didn't mean that you never would get another opportunity. You would just have to keep working around and keep pursuing and getting through whatever the problem was, and then eventually you would be on the other side, a better and smarter person, both the player and as the individual inside the game. Another wonderful one that is a little bit different than those last two ones that I just talked about was also just the fact that I've also played something like Slime Rancher, and Slime Rancher is more of a relaxing version of the two games, if I'm being honest, because there's no real time limit or, you know, end goal per se. It's just a game where you would just basically just walk around, taking these little cute slimes, putting them in a ranch, feeding them and mixing, you know, different breeds of these slimes so you could try to see all many alternate types that you could. The farming aspect was more just actually getting different types of fruits and types of hens to be able to feed your slime so they could produce more. And then what would come with that would be power-ups and other things so you can explore this vast open world even more. Which is also why I fell in love with Rune Factory 5 so much when we did that the previous year. Because Rune Factory 5, even though it has quite a bit of flaws because of the fact that there's a cap frame rate, and maybe it's also because it seems kind of, you know, a little bit lower rent, and everybody jokes about it being a PS2 game because of how the graphics and stuff look on the Switch, or in general. I could still feel the amount of heart that they put into this game, and I very much appreciate it, because going back from Rune Factory 4 to 5, this was my first time experiencing this in 3D. And for me, personally, I thought, even though it wasn't the most polished game that you'll ever see on the Nintendo Switch when it comes to this sort of genre of game, I personally found my heart really resonating with a lot of the characters in that world. I resonated with a lot of the mechanics of that world. It felt more alive, and it felt more like you could be in tandem with this town, and I would lose myself in just doing the inertia of realizing that I may end up spending like way more hours in this game than I thought originally, because I ended up just enjoying the experience so much. Because I didn't realize this when I was playing it previous year, but I think, once again, a lot of stuff has happened during these past couple of years, such as a pandemic, and then basically being isolated from a lot of people that you used to be around, or you wouldn't even hear from certain people that you thought you would hear a lot from due to the situation that we were all in. But because of that, Rune Factory 5 was a nice crutch of just being able to explore and be outside in a different world, just even within being at home. And of course, I've played things like Animal Crossing New Horizons when that came out eventually, and I enjoyed playing that for a little bit, but there was something just about these other farming games that just did it more for me. Was it the fact that there were monsters that you could recruit and then you could also befriend? Was it because of the fact that the farming and the agricultural point was more of a standout point, more than just collecting X amount of thing and then putting it in a museum that you'll probably never look at all the time? Was it because the pacing of the game was of your own making, and depending on how fast you wanted to go, you could get everything done instead of being conditioned off because it has a day and night cycle that forces you to only be able to do certain things at a certain time of real life day? All these questions I think about every time I play a new one of these, farming sim games. Today, or currently, at the present, I am currently playing through Harvestella, a game that I did a Once Again Talking About series. And honestly, as I'm playing the game now, I'm quite enjoying it. Again, like I said back when the demo came out the previous year in November, there was some issues that I took a little bit of a stance to, but not because I didn't completely dislike them. It's more just the fact that I was always concerned when it comes to these farming games, they don't need to be super complex or they don't need to be too punishing, because the point of these games, first and foremost, is to be able to enjoy yourself and just take your time and have fun. A Persona 5 thing that, I've taken from that game, that I've also been adding to most other farming and life sim games, even though that one's more of a JRPG rather than just a life sim game, is that you can take your time. It's okay to not rush everything. Taking your time and enjoying the ride is the reason why you're doing a lot of things in life. Of course, the end goal is always something that you can strive for as well, but if you miss everything along the way, you forget the beauty of nature and the beauty of just what you've accomplished along the way. And I will say that the influence that these farming sims have had on me is a better appreciation and respect for nature in and above itself. I actively go out sometimes and take photography of animals, and actively go out and feel more of the air around me, the fresh air, the last little bit of, normalcy of the world before one day it will be taken away by corporate people that will just want to destroy our nature and turn it into stuff that we won't even be able to use as humans because it will be too expensive. It will be just because of greed and just because of the fact that they want to show the wrath of the world that they should be on top rather than these other people, while destroying nature that didn't really earn any of that, really. Because even though I live in Canada, it's starting to look a lot more like, the US would sometimes, where a lot of it's just getting super commercialized with big buildings and things and rearranging things that we don't really technically need that much because there's several different things. But yeah, the more I look at my town, I more realize there's a lot more car shops than anybody who would want vehicles around here. There's a lot more independent stores that have very niche specialty things, but was it worth the nature and the life that was preserved there to take away from? The more I think about it, the more it kind of does make me a little bit sad, but at least a lot of nature is still preserved here. At least you could still go to a place where at least there's actual places that are completely 100% safe from being deforested or taking away a lot of habitats from animals, but a lot of it still harks the question, how far is too far, Because as much as I love going out into nature, I realize the only way I go out into nature is with a vehicle, which helps expedite the whole thing of climate change, which we know now, or I have always known since probably when I was a teenager. Climate change is happening more and more rapidly. I could tell people back a long time ago when I could predict when snow would happen and when things would happen, because I was very much in tune with the fact that I really like nature a lot. Nowadays, I can tell people that, yeah, the reason why things are what they are is because of climate change. I could tell people so many years in a row, we've never seen a white Christmas, and that's insane because you guys just heard I live in Canada, and that was not used to be the case. But over the course of like a decade, there was a cutoff point near the fourth year of, I think, 2014 or 2015, that's when it started radically shifting to not seeing as much snow every year. Of course we got some near the end of this winter season, but it's scary to know how much things are radically changing, you know? In a game where I play that there has 4 seasons, where it's like spring, summer, fall, and then winter, it's honestly astonishing to see how much those games still remind me of the times of when we used to have consistent weather. Though I will admit that 4-day calendars on a video game isn't the same as going through 12 months in real life, but regardless, it's still one of those things that you kind of put into your own mind and your own perspective of how much you do value certain things in life, and you can let them pass you by. Which is why I'm trying to do a lot more for myself, both physically and mentally, to remind myself that these things are fleeting. Everything in life is fleeting and won't always stay the same, but you can at least enjoy them while they last. It's okay to enjoy yourself and not take everything so seriously every single day. It's okay not to reach the goals and milestones that you want to right away, because honestly, sometimes if you do reach all of those goals and milestones too quickly, you forgot what it took to get there, and then you don't value it as much. The reason why I like farming games so much is because every single time that I play one, the build-up over time is what I enjoy with these games. I made a tips and tricks video on Rune Factory 5 a while ago, and it always baffled me when people were telling me that, you know, I was talking about a way to get money the fastest way in the game as of this point. But it really was just a way that I thought would be fast, considering that I didn't try to do, you know, something that would make the AI give me something really good. It was more just you were using the natural elements in the world, such as, you know, being able to go to a dungeon, being able to use an ability that was called capture, taking a rare item off of a creature, and using like all your resources to be able to naturally just take it off of these enemies and then be able to bring it back, and you would get a good chunk of money. But a lot of the comments did roast me and flame me for telling me, saying, hey, this isn't actually the quickest method. The quickest method is using this exploit to the AI to give you this really rare item when you're on very low health. Which, yes, that was true. That was the way to do it. But the reason I didn't do that, because it misses the whole point of why I play farming games for me personally. Me going out and doing these things to get these items from these monsters felt more natural than waiting in a dungeon for me to be at low health for this character that you could have in your party to throw you something really expensive to then take and sell. It doesn't give it the same value. It doesn't give it the same meaning to earn that money through taking it from somebody as an AI person, which would not happen in real life, by the way, and then being like, oh, I earned all of this money by being patient and being, you know, exploiting how the game works to be able to make it to my whim, which you can do that. And of course, the best thing about farming games is that it's your own expression of freedom and what you would like to do with it. It was always just something for me where I was like, I just never chose that route, because for me, personally, being able to play something like Rune Factory 5, the game that I enjoy, I want to take the nature and the cause of the whole experience and being like, no, I don't want to take money from a NPC that's gonna randomly give it to me when I'm at very low health and it's a random amount of time to drop, and sit in a dungeon and waste an entire day hoping that they drop this item because I want to be greedy. It's not about that. For me, it was always about enjoying the journey and enjoying the build up to making sure that you can get this much money, and then working around the fact that until you get that much money, what can you do to accelerate that process that doesn't allow yourself to be taken away from the entire journey and the retrospective of being able to enjoy the game. But even at the end of the day, the most important part of this is most of these games are single player, so honestly, the thing is, if you wanted to do that other method, it's okay, and that's fine. I don't look down on anybody for doing it. I just know that I personally have a taste to not want to do that, because I don't want to make the game lose some of the value of like farming or doing any of that other stuff. Like Rune Factory 5 for me, I love doing the farming and making the plants and grow and like experimenting on what I could make as an individual. What sort of things and combinations of plants would be helpful? What sort of things can I do to make my animals and my monster buddies even be more useful? What can I do to be able to continue to be very optimal with farming the agriculture side, while also maintaining a steady flow of money so I can then craft weapons and other things so I can exceed? I think that Rune Factory 5 was honestly a game that made me really understand and realize something for myself that I forgot about for a while, which is, it is okay, it's 100% okay to take your own route in life and people to disagree with it. But at the end of the day, it's your life and your route to take. So even if people don't agree with it, or people don't really understand it 100%, you can show them along the way, but it's okay not to convince them. Because after all, everybody has their own way of viewing life and viewing things that they like to do. And it's one of the huge reasons why I love these farming series, because everybody will have their own story to tell from playing these games. What they've done, what they decided to do, which route they wish to choose, what people in their game that they liked more than other people, what sort of thoughts they had for who they wanted to become their marriage partner, what they wanted to do as a build for their character. What did they focus on? What did they like growing? What did they like when they made the certain recipes or the certain gadgets, in the game? All of that stuff culminates into a really good mesh of being able to say you lived another life. You've lived another life, you gained more wisdom, and you grew as a person. A lot of video games allow you to do that in above itself, but I think farming games are special because you really learn a lot more about yourself just by just existing in another world and entrancing yourself in that state of mind. Because who knows, there are other universes probably out there with us on it, probably doing something similar to what we're doing now, or something completely different. But you always wonder, I wonder what could have changed that would have made me a different person in that world. And that's wonderful, I think, to be able to sit down and just say, man, if there was a chance to be able to visit this world, I wonder if I could, and I would have been able to enjoy it as much as I did while playing this game. But honestly, that is exactly why I will always preach to all of these games that I have played, and I will continue to enjoy both Harvestella and every other game that I find interesting through the farming sim / farming simulator type genres. Though I will say that Harvestella is more of an RPG rather than a farming sim game altogether. I will say that I do very much appreciate going through a new game with a different experience and a different take on how the system works. Understanding the mechanics and understanding what is going to make me feel like I'm going to be making a lot of benefits versus making myself have to work extra hard. But also knowing that if I take my time, I can actually exceed and do a lot more things if I just take a little step back and try to focus on the other things that are just simply a part of life. But yeah, my lovely child of the internet, that's going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed my ramblings of talking about why I love farming simulators. Honestly, farming simulators are one of my favorite genres that I don't get to share a lot on the channel, mostly because, again, it's one of the things where I like playing them a lot to myself, and I do get lost in the idea of just playing them and enjoying them for what they are without, other people seeing. Rune Factory 5, I think, is going to be probably the only game that you'll ever get to see that sort of side of me, of just sheerly enjoying the ride and enjoying the intensive care that I got to put into a farming game, because there's going to be a lot more that's going to be coming out this year, such as Rune Factory 3. I might do some tips and tricks videos on that as well, along with Harvestella once I get deeper into the game and I start figuring out things that would make that game a lot more fun if you haven't already played or wanted or were interested in playing it but just never picked it up because you didn't know how much fun you were going to have because of, certain mechanics that you're not used to. But after all, there was nothing better to start off with, I think, for the series than talking about why I love these games, because in the Why I Love series, I hope to just be able to spread my joy or my, passion towards whatever thing that I care and I really much love talking about for everybody to hear. Because honestly, to be honest, this isn't really like a review sort of thing. This is just how you feel and how the experience of doing or meeting X characters or X series in the type of genre of game really affected you. So if you guys have any stories about, any of these games, farming games or otherwise that made you have a strong experience, please put them down in the comments below. I do read my comments, and I do like and favorite them. If I see one that I really like, I'll probably even pin it. Because, like I said, I think everybody has the experience to share, but we don't all get to share it all the time. Mostly because we're worried about how other people perceive them. But, you know, it's okay to be able to share those experiences and understand that, yeah, not everybody may agree with you, but at the end of the day, we can still respect and understand other people's opinions or views on how they enjoy their lives and how they enjoy certain characters or maybe dislike characters. But that being said, I have been Multi126789, other known as Multi-Man. Thank you, lovely childs of the internet, for joining me. I have been wonderfully blessed by these farming games, and that is why I love the farming sim genre.